In today's world, for anyone to get on a YouTube show and talk about Ozempic in something that may sound like a positive tone, that's a gutsy maneuver. I was a little bit surprised when Jesus showed me the title and the topic for discussion for today, because everybody that I know that's a content creator is hating on Ozempic. Why is everybody hating on Ozempic? Because it's become extremely popular. Ever since the GLP-1s, and GLP-1 is one of the terms that I'll use a lot. Ever since the GLP-1s, like Ozempic and its newer, more effective rival, Mounjaro, and now there's the other ones out there too. Ever since those came to being, there's been a lot of interest in them and a lot of use. And in fact, a lot of people haven't been able to access them because they were so popular. When something gets very, very popular, one of the great ways to get content that hits, that's popular, that gets a lot of views, is to take the contrarian view, to say, hey, there's something wrong with this new thing that everybody's using. Just like any prescription medication or group of medications, there are plenty of things wrong with the GLP-1s. The things that you'll hear more often, I'm not so worried about. For example, quote, Ozempic face, although that's an issue, and we'll talk about it in today's show. Muscle loss is a big issue, but it's not as big of an issue as people love to talk about. Muscle loss is critical. Muscles are critical, especially as we start getting into and beyond our 60s, mid 60s. Muscle loss may be more important than fat gain in terms of metabolism and ability to have a healthy lifespan or health span. So the two things that I just said, for example, sound totally opposed to each other. That, maybe the Ozempic muscle loss thing is overblown, but then saying muscle loss, you can't overblow it. It may be the most critical thing for those of us 65 and older. So how do we put those two together? We'll plan on doing that again in the show today. And again, as you may have guessed, I don't expect to get a whole lot of views on this one. This is one where we want to go ahead and put a stake in the ground and say, this is our position on several things. We don't expect them to be popular, but sometimes the right thing is not popular. And we want to go ahead and make a comment regarding what we think is the right thing. Now, when we say we, that implies that there's somebody else. And yep, there's somebody else who's in this with me and who got me going on it. And his name is Dr. Jesus Vega, very well trained in preventive medicine. And couldn't wait to get on board and get started, could you?
So I'm just putting wood to the fire because every time we cover a medication, there are a lot of people saying, oh, here's Dr. Brewer selling medications again. There's one thing you need to understand. Both Dr. Brewer and I are practicing doctors. He's in the US, I'm in Mexico. And we both use medication as what they are, tools. That's it. We're not saying that they will solve every problem. But there's one thing that we wanted to share about Dr. Brewer's experience when he was using Ozempic, which is the main point of the show. So I want to give the answer right away, and so we can go deeper into that.
The answer to what?
What's the best hidden benefit from Ozempic that you discovered? And you discovered that on yourself, though.
Well, see, we're going to talk about some weird stuff. And we're going to talk about my own. I'm an Ozempic patient. I'm not taking it anymore. I'm taking Mounjaro. And we'll talk in detail about that. Well, a totally separate conversation is the conversation about my experience with it as a doctor and with patients. A third conversation is what the research looks like. I know we've already gotten some comments. Don Udell, I gotta mention this. Don Udell has said, "Look, muscle loss is not overblown. We need muscle." As Don, I don't know, you may have, if you're listening, you might have heard the next thing I said after I said muscle loss. I didn't say muscle loss was overblown. I said the assumption that you're always going, or what I meant to say was the assumption that you're always going to get muscle loss if you take the GLP-1s. That's not accurate. In fact, as a patient taking those medications myself, I've had significant increase in muscle at the time that I've been taking those. So again, don't expect to get a whole lot of popular understanding or popular views or interest in this show, because it's going to dive a lot deeper and it's going to deal with some stuff that's just not going to be popular.
You keep promising and you're not delivering. What's the hidden benefit?
Sleep. So right, we're going to go into that. You want to go into that story, huh?
I want to go into sleep and then we go to the other stuff. Please do.
Okay. So I'm a diabetes patient. Nobody ever would have, I don't think, well, I know 99.9% of doctors would not have diagnosed my diabetes. My fasting blood sugars were always good. I look and act, and my stuff is metabolic. My metabolic markers are all good. If you did my HOMA IR, that would have been good. But then you start looking a little bit deeper and you actually do a fasting glucose, and you actually put a CGM on me, a continuous glucose monitor. There were times when my blood sugar went over 200. By definition, that makes me fit the most common and most popular definition of type 2 diabetes. So I'm one of those people that we talk about all the time, and it's, you know, it's somewhat selfish, but it is the major reason for the channel. And that is our position that it's not LDL, folks. It's undiagnosed prediabetes and even diabetes. And we started this like 8 years ago. At this point in time, more and more evidence is going that direction. For example, in the most recent NHANES study, National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, it showed that over half of people 18 years and older have prediabetes and 90% don't know it. And so once we get that 90% to understand that they have the problem, it will be a totally different world. Now, why am I going into that? I'm one of those patients that would never have been diagnosed. And I deal with that all the time. Now, there are medications for diabetes. Diabetes should be treated, just like we've said. If you're not hearing it, if you're new to the channel, you need to know a lot of background. One thing that I say over and over and over and over is you can't out-medicate a lifestyle.
Correct.
So two of the most important things in terms of lifestyle are the amount of carbs you eat on a daily basis. And even more important, believe it or not, is the amount of body fat, especially visceral fat that wraps around your organs inside your belly. If you have those two problems, those should be your major focus. So why would we even be talking about medications? Well, you look at somebody like me. I had a BMI of 22, often dropped down to 21 at the time that I had the diagnosis. So it wasn't like I had a whole lot of body fat that I could decrease. And you'd say, well, okay, maybe you were fat on the inside. You were a tofu, thin on the outside, fat on the inside. I didn't get a DEXA scan until more recently, but I can tell you my visceral body fat is less than 0.5%. What was it? It was 2.5 pounds or something. I mean, it was.
I think it was closer to 1 pound, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So you were way below the 2 pounds that are recommended as the limit.
Bottom line was, there wasn't much more I could do in terms of losing body fat or visceral fat Now I could gain more muscle, and I continue to work on that. And I have continued to work on that. My weight's gone from like 150 with a waist size of 32, 33, and now I'm up to like 165 with the same waist size. So, and Jesus, by the way, will say I've got a luchadero belly.
And I don't think you're gonna get rid of that. But if you're familiar with wrestling, luchadors have a belly, but it's hard. Like they have a lot of muscle on it. So that's what happened over there.
Anyway,
bad luck.
We digress, but you're wanting to get into some more personal stuff. So that's
I wanted to talk about sleep, and you're like running around the bushes. Can you help us make the connection between diabetes and sleep and Ozempic?
So here's what happened. I'm trying to get there. I'm trying to set the story up.
Okay.
So you and I just learned a lot about setting the story up and sharing personal stuff. So I'm setting the story up.
I'm trying to represent the impatient viewer.
I know.
I think I'm doing a good job.
I think you're doing a good job, but as I said, I'm not sure the impatient viewer is going to do well on this. I mean, if you want a single synapse or a 15-second version, this is not going to be the video to watch. So, given what I do, I'm very, very interested in diabetes management, and some people do need medications. There is a place for medications. So that's what I was building up. And I was one of those people where it wasn't like I could drop more carbs on my daily diet, and it wasn't like I had a whole lot of visceral body fat that I could drop. So I did add metformin. I don't take the full amount. I take 500 milligrams 3 or 4 times a week. But I was also very interested, given what I had seen in the research community about Ozempic. One of the things that we found, speaking of the research story about Ozempic, was that we always thought that weight loss, those of us in the weight loss community always tended to think that weight loss was really more discipline than anything else. And the vast majority of my patients that had lost huge amounts of weight did it almost all by saying the same thing. I dropped my carbs, then I went intermittent fasting, and then some of them actually went with more prolonged fasting. So again, it's all people without discipline are not going to accomplish much, but the research community in weight loss has totally dramatically changed based on the GLP-1s. The GLP-1s, Ozempic is the first one that came out that was popular, are hormones that actually are made by the intestines. They tell your body that, okay, we're satiated, we're full, and be ready to, we're starting to process this food, be ready for some carbs to hit the bloodstream, and also don't eat anymore. JMK asked, the first question that we had today was JMK saying, oh no, it wasn't JMK. The second question, G. Fulton saying, is there evidence to suggest that short-term low-dose Ozempic restores proper hunger signals? And the answer is yes. I mean, that's what changed the weight loss community. People are it's changing the hunger signal for people like nothing else ever has. But most people think of this as a weight loss drug. It was originally not developed to be a weight loss drug. It was developed to be a class of drugs for diabetes. You say, well, why do we need a class of drugs for diabetes? We already established there's a lot of people that need drugs in addition to lifestyle management. The other thing is the next drug beyond metformin, or the big drug, was insulin. And insulin is a bad drug to have to take. It causes weight gain. It causes cardiovascular inflammation. It's just not good. And sure enough, the GLP-1s and the SGLT2s like Jardiance both have come out of the blocks, probably wiping out at least 80% of the need for insulin medication. So it's a big deal. And those are fantastic. Given what I do for a living, therefore, you begin to see why I would be interested in the GLP-1s and the SGLT2s, these new drug classes for diabetes that are not insulin. So now the next statement, the next step of this, and I know you're saying, Ford,
It took you long enough.
Yeah, it took me long enough. So here's the thing.
But I mean, I'm okay with it. I'm just saying it's important information. So I'm glad that you're touching that.
So here's the next thing. We got Bama J on today, and she watches quite a bit. And thank you so much for your participation, Bama J. I don't know if you met us when we did the Alabama project, but we set up a whole series of clinics, 7 clinics in Alabama, focusing on Medicare Advantage. It's people that are, by definition, almost all of them are 65 and older, which by definition are in that high risk group, just like me. 65 and older, where muscle loss is a big deal. Diabetes is over 80% of us by the time we're 65 have at least pre-diabetes. And again, 90% of us don't know it. So it's a big, big deal for that population. That may have been where you met us, Bama J. I don't know. Assuming you are from Alabama. Anyhow, so we had some free samples at the clinic, and I said, "Oh, I'm going to try this. It's a diabetes drug. I have diabetes. I tried the sample. Now, here's the rest of the story on the personal basis. I tried that first sample about 10 o'clock one night. Didn't notice anything. We were evaluating a project in New Orleans the next day. So I went to New Orleans the next day. We were staying in a hotel to save money. The hotel rooms were like $300. So to save money, James West, who was my business partner, not personal partner. I'm heterosexual. And my personal partner is.
What are you talking about?
Anyway, well, we slept in the same room. And here's why I'm going to tell you the rest of that story, because you're asking about sleep. So at 4 a.m, I didn't wake up. But James said, well, here's what happened. I woke up in the bathroom trying to find the light switch. But then James told me the rest of the story. He said, at 4 a.m, you got up, you walked to the door, then you walked out to, this was on a balcony. He said, you walked out, you looked over the balcony, and I thought you were going to jump over. Then you got up, you stood back up, you came back into the hotel room. Then you walked over to James's luggage, picked it up, turned around sideways, and dropped it all on the floor. Then you walked into the bathroom and disappeared for a while. And so the bottom line is, in 24 hours after taking my first dose of Ozempic, I started sleepwalking again. I used to do that all the time when I was in high school, but that was the last time I ever did it until the night that I first took Ozempic. And one of the things that I've
not just sleepwalking, you were about to jump to the balcony. So that's a good sponsorship to say, don't take Ozempic, right? If you're a sleepwalker, you might as well don't take it, or sleep whenever there are not balconies. Just stay on the first floor.
Well, I think you and James, I think there may have been an over. I'm very comfortable. I would not have jumped off of the thing. I think I was just looking over, but I was asleep. I don't know. It was obviously there was a little bit of danger there. I have not slept walk again since then, but I have to tell you, it's had a huge impact on my sleep. Now, we've seen a few people mention that in the past, and you've seen some theories about it where they say, maybe it's controlling your blood sugar so you don't have the Sumoji effect. And you may be familiar. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but some listeners are not going to be. I'll just repeat it. Sumoji was a Japanese physician who noticed that people with diabetes would wake up, especially if they had tight control of their diabetes. And what was going on was their blood sugar would plummet. In order to get their blood sugar back up, their epinephrine, adrenaline, and cortisol would shoot way up, and that would wake up the patient. So doctors that are managing patients, especially managing them with insulin, really have to look out for Sumoji effects. I don't know that that's the case. If that's what's causing the difference, I don't think so. I just don't. I know that, like many diabetes and pre-diabetes patients, especially like many patients that get into their 60s, I have what's called early morning awakening, except I had early morning awakening starting in my 30s, and it got worse in my 40s. My dad had the same thing. I had no problems going to sleep, but I'd wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning. And if I was able to go back to sleep for just a few minutes before I woke up at 7, I'd be good. Otherwise, it was going to be a challenging day. Anyhow, having been able to get back to good sleep, I said, sleep's so important, and it makes such a difference in my life. I don't really need the GLP-1s as a patient for diabetes control. I don't need them for weight control. I've been able to control both of those using lifestyle alone, but I haven't been able to impact my sleep before, ever, in over 30 years, like I did with the GLP-1s. Now, if you go a little bit deeper, is that just totally what we call idiosyncratic? Is it something that's just only happened to me?
Or are you making that up?
Am I making it up? And obviously I asked that question because you don't see a whole lot about it, or you haven't seen a whole lot about it in the research community. Now, I got all excited a couple of weeks ago because an article came out in the New England Journal. Mounjaro, which I'm now taking instead of Ozempic, Mounjaro has gotten an indication for sleep apnea. And I mentioned, the next time Jesus and I met, I mentioned it, and I was all excited. And so then I pulled the article. I looked at it, not so excited anymore, because it wasn't the same mechanism. The impact that I'm getting is immediate, within 24 hours. The New England Journal article about improving sleep apnea was totally different. It was people that had a BMI of 30 or more. Oh, they had a problem with obesity. And within a few months, because of the weight loss, they were able to get a decrease in their sleep apnea. So one of the core things that I haven't really stated outright that needs to be stated is the importance of sleep in healthy longevity. I think poor sleep over the next decade is going to be equivalent to what smoking was the last 2 decades. A previously hidden, unknown, huge risk to health.
And just to be clear, we're not saying use Ozempic to improve your sleep as the main indication. I think this is your story. We don't want to know what else happened on that room with James West, but just saying
nothing.
Well, that because you were sleepwalking. Anyhow, it's digressing. But just saying that
you're going way down a bunny hole that doesn't.
This is a hidden benefit that I wanted to share that happened in your specific case. Most of sleep apnea improvement we saw, even with Ozempic, there's research in Ozempic, is because of the weight loss, not because some other mechanism.
It was not this other mechanism that I suspect. Now, here's one of the things to recognize is that there's a whole because of this, the success where it's happened, and because of some other things, the general science around the GLP-1s has exploded. And one of the examples, one of the areas, for example, is that there's a huge amount of research going on to look at GLP-1s and alcohol addiction, just general addictions, alcohol addiction, drug addiction, etc. Now, where's that coming from? Again, some of the things that we're talking about. In Parkinson's, there's a very, very interesting thing that has gone on. the most devastating, destructive type of Parkinson's is very much associated with sleep loss. And believe it or not, guess what's been found to help that specific type of Parkinson's?
Interesting. Are you saying GLP-1s are being used for that? Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised you didn't know that. You're too busy making fun of me. That's what, and not busy enough looking at the science.
I'm too busy writing jokes. It's your job to educate the people. It's my job to make it a little bit more entertaining, which I'm failing to do so today. So I'm sorry.
Well, look what folks need to know that, yes, you're trying to make it more entertaining so more people want to listen. And it's like sometimes listening to me can be like watching paint dry. So you've got your challenges.
I think paint drying is more entertaining. Anyhow, continue.
No, I finally got to the point. It took us, 15, 20 minutes? I finally got to the point where I'm answering your question. That hidden benefit that you're talking about is sleep.
So let me ask.
No, we're not recommending to take Ozempic or the GLP-1s for sleep.
That's important.
It's just something weird. And that's part of why I'd say, yeah, I know you're trying to get more views, but is that the right title for this?
Well, you're just hijacking the video already. But anyhow, what I want to say is, you are taking Ozempic and then you switched to Mounjaro. Why did you switch? Because of the sleep article that you saw?
Your voice just went out. I'm going to repeat it in case for clarity's sake. You said you were taking Ozempic, you're taking Mounjaro. Why did you do that? Is that your question?
Yeah.
So when you look at the actual science, again, we're going to keep bouncing between three different conversations, three totally different topics that have relationships. But remember, they're three different conversations. One of them has to do with research. And when you look at the research between tirzepatide and, I'm having a statin moment. What's the, and Ozempic, the
topic of the show?
Yeah, the generic for Ozempic. When you compare those two, Mounjaro, semaglutide or semaglutide, depending on how you pronounce it. When you compare those two in head-to-head comparisons, Mounjaro was about 3 times more effective. It also had about half the side effects. The most common recognized side effects for Ozempic had nothing to do with sleep improvement. It was stomach problems, diarrhea, cramping, even vomiting. So
did you develop any of those?
A couple of times when I first started it, just a little bit, but I knew what was going on. And as I had said, I was so impressed with the benefit on my sleep that I was able to get through it. One of the big places where you see those GI problems is when somebody overeats out of habit anyway, and you just don't have the potential for overeating with the GLP-1s that you do with the other medications. One of the things that GLP-1s do is they shut down the emptying of the stomach. Again, the GLP-1s are a hormone. I studied them way back in the dark ages when I went to school back in 1980s.
Yeah.
And we all knew about the knowledge of the GLP-1s as a hormone made by the intestines was very, very well known. But it's sort of like the sorcerer's apprentice in technology. You find out you find out something, you create some new technology, and sometimes it surprises you with all the other impacts, both good and bad.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's why we're not saying go ahead and you need to be on Ozempic if you want to deal with diabetes, insulin resistance. We're saying it's a tool. It will be fantastic if everybody who's dealing with metabolic disease, they know that they have it, which 90% of people with prediabetes don't know, which was your main point at the beginning.
Yeah.
And that they understand that it's not the medication what's going to solve the problem. But there's some people who struggle with lifestyle for which medications can be a good jump starter to get there. The problem is when you rely, all your efforts are putting, all the eggs are on one basket, which is medication. That's just not going to work.
A couple of comments. Number one, again, the show today is not meant for everybody, and clearly not for a lot of the new viewers, because it's sort of like an old style show where we got way deep into the technology of what we do, and not so much about what people are just learning. You mentioned one other comment unrelated to that, but you mentioned again why Mounjaro versus Ozempic. Tirzepatide or Mounjaro also, I think you can make some assumptions that not only did it come across as 2 to 3 times more effective, it had half the side effects. It's what we called a twincretin. Incretin is the generic name for the GLP-1 hormones, but twincretin basically meant there was 2 different hormones in Mounjaro, so it had a double effect with less side effects.
Yeah.
The one thing I haven't seen and I'm curious about is this whole thing about quote muscle loss, end quote. Is muscle loss less with Mounjaro? I have to assume that it is, but I'm just not sure.
Okay, I can do a quick search on the evidence and get an answer for that. But the one thing I will mention also though is that anytime you lose weight and you're not moving, like you're not exercising, you're doing a prolonged fasting, you're using these medications, and you're not exercising at all, and not saying you need to exercise a lot during the fasting, just saying walking or moving around a little bit. Just walking can improve your chances of not losing muscle, which can happen.
Yeah.
So and that's one of the side effects that people say, oh, you're losing weight, but you're losing both fat and muscle. If you're moving around, yes, that can happen. And I believe that Mounjaro can have that effect as well. One study found that, well, this is for semaglutide, 39%. Let me see if I can find a good evidence for that.
While you're looking for that, I'm going to jump in and again deal with Don Udell's comment. So again, Don, and for the others, I could not agree more. Muscle loss is not overblown. Muscle loss may end up being, many people think, and I tend to agree with them, with the point that muscle loss, especially by the time you get into the mid 60s, is more important than fat as a risk factor. And again, to clarify, and it's one of the questions we're asking right now, do you get less muscle loss with Mounjaro or tirzepatide? Now, I mentioned myself that I've had significant increase. We've got it on my DEXA scan, very significant increase in muscle mass and metabolic health of my muscles while taking these medications, the GLP-1s. And as Jesus just said, I'm going to underline it and repeat it. It's all about exercise. And it's not just walking. You know, as Jesus said, yeah, walking can help. But the reality is the things that make a much bigger difference are resistance training and high intensity interval training. There was some really good research which did actual muscle biopsies, and it compared the types of exercise. Before I go into it, though, I want to make the comment. I hear this time and time and time and time again. Oh, it's going to cause muscle loss. Oh, it's going to cause muscle loss. Well, let me tell you, any kind of weight loss without exercise is going to cause muscle loss, any kind whatsoever. And I just do not hear it when content creators come out and talk about muscle loss with the GLP-1s. I never hear them talk about the obvious antidote, exercise. Now, I've heard Rhonda Patrick, speaking of content creators, I've heard Rhonda Patrick make one of the best comments about this space ever. And she talks about the snack that saves your life. And she's talking about exercise snacks. So, you know, every couple of hours, 2 or 3 times a day, just go over and do some body weight squats. One of the things about squats, by the way, hits another issue, and that is you're hitting the big muscles that improve your metabolism. So I struggle on how to say this, but it's like, don't complain to me about muscle loss if you're not doing exercise. Come on, that's just plain stupid.
Oh man, did you get angry? What happened?
It is. I mean, I just hear it so much. It's like, do away with one of the things that is creating a lot of power for helping our patients and making them scared to death of it when you didn't even talk about, you're talking about muscle loss, but you're not even talking about resistance training or HIIT training. And
Yeah.
it's like, come on, that's stupid.
So just from a quick search on PubMed, I mean, I have not seen the whole complete evidence. I'm finding a good article, Surpass-3 MRI study. They found that using tirzepatide can burn fat within the muscle. It's a 300, almost 300% participants, which fat within the muscle is a big driver of inflammation as well. Not saying tirzepatide cannot cause muscle loss. I think it can, and I think that's the whole point. You need to change your lifestyle. You cannot just rely on the medication. And I hope that most people are able to achieve their goals without using medications. That would be the ideal.
And most people can. This is an issue for a small minority, but an important group, especially again the people that are 65 and older.
Yeah,
you start seeing a lot more of that.
I wanna go to another question real quick. So you're using Mounjaro right now. For how long are you thinking you're going to use it? And if you ever stop it, are you worried about side effects or any other stuff?
Before I answer that question, I had to.
Of course you do.
That's not it. Oh, here it is. Are you cold this morning?
Oh yeah, it's just my house. It's just too cold.
You better put some wood on that fire. See if you can warm up a little bit, or start creating some brown fat. Sit there in the cold, be cold a little bit. Take a cold shower.
Well, let me tell you one thing that I'm trying to do, because it has to do with this. And I'm not taking Mounjaro. I'm not taking Ozempic. I am taking Metformin once a day.
Now, why are you doing that?
Well, there is some good evidence for anti-aging, but more than that, it can help the gut biome, and it can help me stabilize my blood sugar levels. I have pre-diabetes. For a lot of people might not know that. I'm on 34.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. Even though you're 34 years old, you've discovered that you're pre-diabetic as well.
Oh yeah, and
this is not just a 60-year-old disease.
No, and I misbehaved during the holidays, and I gained like 8 pounds. So I'm trying to get that back. I'm already down 3 or 4 pounds already just by going back to the usual lifestyle. But the point is, I'm doing more exercise now. I'm changing the diet. I know that because of my age, it's going to be easier. But if you're 60, 65 years older, it might not be as easy. So then it comes back to the question, for how long should you
Jesus, there's something, I think it must be yours. It might be mine, but it might be yours. I thought you said for how long, and then I heard blah, 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 some.
Sorry, I think it's a StreamYard. Somebody said it was a StreamYard.
Okay, but so the question was, for how long should you take Ozempics? How often, stuff like that, or Ozempics or Mounjaro? Yeah. Was that the question?
Yeah.
So it depends on the patient. I personally, as people that work with me know, I tend to take most medications, except blood pressure medications for the most part. I tend to take most medications less often and for fewer reasons, and lower dosages than most of the standards. I'm doing the same thing with GLP-1s. I personally take Mounjaro at the lowest dose, the 2.5 milligrams. And I've been taking Mounjaro for about 2 years and Ozempic for about a year before that. And I tended to take it no more than once every 2 weeks, and often took it like once every 2 months. More recently, I've started taking it more often, like every 1 to 2 weeks, as is recommended in the standards. Now, the question is why? Again, for me, it's weird, but it goes back to sleep more than anything else.
Important. So should people be worried about if they decide to try it and then they lose 20 pounds, 30 pounds, they're changing their lifestyle and they say, okay, you know what, I'm good. I'm gonna try it with just the new lifestyle that I acquired, and they
Well,
stop the medication. They should they be worried?
I don't know, Jesus. You see, I do know. Let me rephrase this. You see a lot of patients with me. What I don't know is if it's 20% or 40% of our patients actually fit that category. You know, you'll also hear from all the content creators, well, most of the content creators. Oh, this is one of these medicines. Once you take it, you can never go off. That's also not true. Just not true. We have tons of people that go off of it. They go on, they accomplish their weight loss. In the same time, they're changing their lifestyle. Now, here's a related and sort of opposite point. We also get plenty of people that join us that are taking both SGLT2s and GLP-1s and still are obese, still have not made any impact on their weight. You have to have discipline and you have to change your lifestyle. But a huge portion of our patients accomplish the weight loss and then stop the medication. So again, I know it's the fad right now among content creators to bang on and criticize and warn of all of the terrible things with the GLP-1s. And I know it's not going to make us popular for most of those folks and most of the we've had a lot of growth recently, and it's coming from a lot of people that are not as deep as our core watcher, and it's gonna create some question about, well, why would you talk about positive about something that everybody else is just saying is terrible? Yep. It's sort of like it's like the aspirin thing. You remember we put out some video recently, and it actually became our most popular video. I would say that I wrote it. Jesus would say that he wrote it. And you can take a look at it and see who actually wrote it.
Yeah.
Not you, Jesus. But
yeah. I mean, the whole point is aspirin is just like any other medication. It has side effects. And you see a lot of people saying, it causes ulcers and you can bleed because of that. That's true. Can you develop thyroid cancer from GLP-1s? That's also true. That has been seen on mice. The thing is, every medication has a side effect. And if you want to go the natural route, you have a lot of work to do, and it's possible. You have to do it. There are some people that will benefit from medications, and that's what we are trying to analyze.
Benefits and risks.
Exactly. And different to the usual medical office, medical offices will say, well, just take this pill and move on. We'll see you in 3 months. That's not how it works. You cannot just rely on a pill. If you don't mind, we're almost there. Unless you want to add something else. I want to honor our YouTube members, which you just neglected them.
I didn't. That's your job.
Oh, man. I cannot stop you from doing stuff, even if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Morris Sunny Tashvar just became a YouTube member. Thank you so much. If Gilbert, can you give us the number to the office and how they can become a YouTube member as well? So if you want to become a YouTube member, I'm going to try answer your questions first, although there are some days like today where Dr. Brewer misbehaves and do whatever he wants. So, SXM, a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned an alternative to metoprolol that did not push insulin resistance as much, but the audio was garbled. Oh, I'm sorry about that. So alternative to a beta blocker, what do you use?
Carvedilol.
That's right.
And in fact, if you do a quick Google search, you'll find them very quickly. There's a whole bunch of them, but Carvedilol is the one that we use most often.
Yep. Now, we're not saying most cases of insulin resistance are due to metoprolol or people with heart failure. But we're trying to use medications. Yeah, exactly. Using medications that will minimize that.
Hey, sis, we're going to have to look at your Wi-Fi. I think there's some challenges, and I think it's getting worse.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I'm going to upgrade that today.
Okay.
So, SXM, I pee several times per night. I've been thinking it was prostate, but could be insulin resistance or diabetes.
It can, I've heard it's interesting. There's a big bunny hole here, but I'm not going to spend much time on it. There's another biomarker It appears to be a bad actor here. IGF, insulin-like growth factor. Now, what's that got to do with this? There's a case to be made that IGF is instrumental in causing growth of the prostate. In other words, benign prostatic hypertrophy, which is the big issue here. I'm not going to go any further down that thing.
I was expecting for the punchline. So,
but the bottom line is that those two can be very much related. The answer is yes.
Okay, good. Trip Priestley, is there a reason why I shouldn't take the 1,000 milligrams of metformin every day as prescribed by my doctor? So this comes to metformin side effects.
Yeah.
So want to rant on that?
I'll get you teed up for you to rant on it. Jesus did wrote the video on this, and the bottom line is there's a ton of people, same thing. They all say don't use metformin. They say metformin causes side effects. They say metformin poisons your mitochondria. They say, David Sinclair, Rhonda Patrick, a whole bunch of people used to take metformin preventively, and then they stopped because it, quote, poisons your mitochondria. Jesus, you want to respond to that?
So what we saw, there's one paper that shows that, and it's a small study. It was focused on athletes, and it turned out they decreased the VO2 max by 50%. The problem was they were using 2,000 milligrams. So other side effects, like
your Wi-Fi messed up again. Well, the problem was they were using 2,000 milligrams a day, is what you said, correct?
Yeah. Yes. And so we never prescribe that high dose, at least not right from the get-go. There are other side effects like gut issues where you get a lot of that bloating and diarrhea, which we believe is because it's helping the gut biome improve, but it's not comfortable at all. So nobody wants to go around with a bloated belly and just expelling a lot of methane into the environment, right? So you want to start with low doses if that's the case. It can help also decrease insulin resistance, improve glucose values, and among other benefits that we covered on that video. I take it, but I don't take more than 500 a day. So what do you think of that, Dr. Brewer?
It reminds me, and I'm trying to read through some of the comments and respond to them as well. I'm not clicking, as you've probably noticed, but I'm trying to coordinate some of our responses. Let me deal with it this way. What portion of patients, Jesus, that we see do you think we write GLP-1s for?
Less than 30%?
Yeah, I would have said about 20%. That would be 20% would be 1 in 5. I don't think we even write them for 1 in 5. I actually think it's less than 20%. Mm-hmm. So the bottom line is, this sounds like we're pushing GLP-1s. No, we're not. And as you heard this discussion, you may say, well, now they're pushing metformin. No, we're not. As Jesus said, we're physicians. There are times and places where prescription medications help, but you cannot out-prescribe a lifestyle. Bottom line, what portion of patients do we deal with lifestyle issues? 100%. So, so again, if you want to make the comment that we're pushing medications, that's just totally wrong. That just means that you're not listening.
And we're cool with patients who don't want to take medications. Like,
in fact, what is that? Maybe 40%, maybe 50% of our patients say, look, I don't want to take any medications. And that is very, very appropriate. I didn't want to take any medications when I first started either. But growing old is not for sissies.
Yep, definitely. So what do you say to Bob? Bob says he's a current PrEP patient. His doctor recommended Ozempic, but stopped it at $200 per month, perhaps forever, which is what we're talking about. This is not forever, or shouldn't be forever. How would you assess if other life changes are working? I think the question here is, how do you know if somebody's ready to stop Ozempic?
Oh, well, that's the whole thing. It's what we talk about. We've talked about many times. sometimes the patient or the viewer doesn't get through the whole video. So what we do is we look at your metabolism. We look at things like triglyceride over HDL. We look at things like your fractionation. One of the most important tests that we do is we actually test to see how you metabolize carbs. For every 10 pounds of weight that you're overweight for your individual set point, you're going to get increases in fasting glucose, fasting insulin, peak glucose and insulin, and 2-hour glucose and insulin. So those are the things we do. We look at your metabolism and we ask your metabolism, and we show you, and then you make your own choices on which things you want to do next. And as Jesus and I have mentioned several times, most people get beyond these problems by managing their lifestyle.
Yep.
Not medications.
Definitely. Joe is asking, how do you know if you have a sleep apnea? So you can get a sleep study, you can get married, or you can just have a one-off with somebody, just take care, and that person will tell you if you're snoring at night. There's a scale called the Stop Bang, STOPVANG, which is a score that measures a couple of things, the size of your neck, among other stuff. And that will tell you also that if you are at risk of a sleep apnea, if you have high blood pressure, or if you can track your oxygen levels during the night, that also it's an indicator whenever you have drops on oxygenation during the night, or you're having high blood pressure. Anything else that I'm probably missing, Dr. Brewer?
A lot of it got cut out by your Wi-Fi.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's there's some challenges there.
Can you repeat that then?
I don't know that I can remember everything.
Well, if you're snoring, if you have high blood pressure, low oxygen levels during the night, or somebody tells you that you're snoring. That's it.
And you went into sleep bang and the size of the neck. One of the best things to do is just if you're waking up, there's a high likelihood that that's going on, whether you're overweight or not. By far the most common problem is being overweight, because the extra weight starts impinging on your airway. But the other thing that happens is, as we get older, for the same reason that our skin sags and we get wrinkles, we also get problems with our airway. And so be aware of that as well. One of the first things to do is try sleeping on your side. That often fixes the problem.
Another question from Joe. Can you be fat adapted, Keto Mojo 0.7 most of the time, and still have your serum glucose go up 10 milligrams versus that 25 milligrams? Mine used to be 90, now closer to 100 or 105.
Jesus, you got to fix that Wi-Fi. So Jesus basically just read what we have there from Joe SXM. The bottom line is, we see this all the time, Joe, where somebody is totally ketotic, they're on a keto diet, and their fasting glucose is high. And it can get higher than that, higher than 100 or 105 even. And quite often it goes along with being more fat adapted, because your body, you don't have the glycogen stores set up quite like you did before. And so now your glycogen stores get triggered much more quickly and much more readily in the morning. So some people have what we call dawn effect, or increased blood sugar in the morning when they're keto adapted and didn't have it before that. So the bottom line is, it has to do with adrenaline and cortisol activity. So don't focus quite so much on that. Focus on your other numbers, like triglyceride over HDL, and your overall, your fractionation, and your overall glucose tolerance test.
All right. So 2 questions are kind of hand to hand. Donald Davidson is asking if berberine is better, and Maurice Sunny Tashbar asking if there's another alternative that's more natural.
I love it when Jesus hates on my comments. And one of the most common hates that he gives me is, don't tell me it depends. Bottom line is, yes, it depends. If it's a very low level, something like berberine can help. Many doctors, especially the standard medical community, will just say, oh, supplements are expensive urine. And that's just not true either. Supplements are more than expensive urine. And the right supplement at the right time can be very helpful. Berberine is helpful in this space. Is it as powerful as metformin? No. Is it as powerful as the GLP-1s? No, not at all. Is it as powerful as decreasing visceral fat or decreasing body fat or increasing muscle? No, it's not as powerful as any of those, but it can help. What are some of the others? Help me out. Garlic is a little bit helpful.
Bergamot.
Bergamot for sure. Bergamot.
I hear a lot about cayenne pepper. Most of the anti-inflammatory stuff that people like to consider for this. But I think the most popular one will definitely be berberine.
Cinnamon, magnesium, chromium, bitter melon.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, not saying those don't work. There's some evidence that suggests that they have a lot of benefits. But from there to say that they have the same potential as a medication, it's hard, like to make that assumption. I'm sorry, like that's just the way it is. I'm not saying not to take them, just saying do not expect those to be solving your problems.
So Drax of the North brings up a really good question. If weight loss or these weight loss drugs can result in somatic muscle loss or regular muscle loss, is it going to do that in the heart? The answer is no. No one's seen that.
No, that I know of. Yeah. Usually heart muscle is pretty much preserved. The body, it's smart enough not to burn proteins from the muscle. All right.
No mention of this being live chat. I don't understand the question there. Do you?
No, but you're answering. I mean, we love Drax of the North and other folks who are long-term viewers. We appreciate you.
Oops, I forgot. They're not a member, are they?
Yeah, but I mean, we love you still. Like, I'm just trying. Some people are paying some extra money to get some benefits, so I'm trying to honor that.
Yeah, make sure that you hit the. Have you finished those?
No, this one. What's the type of keto meter do you like to use?
Oh, it's. Hold on, just a second. I can't remember the name.
I think you said something like keto meter.
Yeah.
Like basically the same name.
Yeah, it's a very generic name, and it's a generic kind of meter, but it's well ranked. Keto scan.
Keto scan. Yeah.
Can you see that?
Not really. Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can't see it very well.
Yeah. Well, keto
and
scan.
So what you do is you blow into it. And this right here shows a grid of lights that it shows you your exact amount. And I tend to stay ketotic about 5 days a week, mildly ketotic. Now, if I start doing some fasting, that ketosis can go way, way up.
Just for those who might not be familiar with it, what's a number that you will consider to say you are in ketosis?
Oh, gosh. You know what? I haven't done it in a month or two. I don't even remember right now.
Was it 0.5?
No, 0.5 is what you tend to see on the blood things. The breath is a little bit different.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I'm thinking about blood ketones.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't use those that much. Like, I personally, I mean, that's my personal opinion. To me, the evidence is not as strong as I would think. But if you like to use them, I don't think there's a problem. Says 0 to 1.9.
0.6, yeah, 1.2. 2
to 3.9. You're in a very early, like it has to be above 2 at least, and clearly above 4.
So, and again, I think you're talking about. Well, no,
this is
not.
this is for the breathing. Right. You have shared some of yours going as high as 10.
Yeah,
if I remember correctly.
10 and 12.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I can get way high on ketosis if I'm fasting. doing
Yep.
prolonged fast.
See here, if you eat a food that has 19 carbs, but it has 2 net carbs, it's like having 2 carbs. Would it have the same effect on ketosis, glucose, insulin, and if you do not count the carbs, do have a net calorie?
You're asking me the question. You're going to cover that.
No. I'd like you to go with it because this is an interesting question. Like, anytime you're on a low carb diet, you can be ketotic. So I think the question is more about, is it the amount of carbs, the total amount of carbs, or if it's the net carbs, or if it's the glycemic carbs? And maybe we need to just define some of those.
Since I'm spending so much time disagreeing with content creators, many of whom I like, I'm going to continue that process. I think Eric Westman would say ignore net carbs. I think Ken Berry, both of whom I like, might say that. I don't remember what Annette Bosch says, but I say, no, I think it's significant. This whole thing about net carbs is you're basically saying, take the fiber out of it. Fiber is officially a carb, but no humans that we've seen yet can digest it and turn it into sugar in the blood. Yeah. So, but yet one of the other things that our federal government has decided in its infinite wisdom is that it has to be labeled as a carb on a food label. Well, that confuses the heck out of this process for anybody going into this space. And even if you're seasoned and you forget to look at net carbs when you look something up and just look at carbs, you can get nailed with it. So no, net carbs matter. Fiber does not make your blood sugar go up. Period.
Yeah. All right. Does Ozempic lower glucose due to weight loss? I think it doesn't require the weight loss part. Like, it can do both. You can establish blood glucose
correct
without losing weight. Yeah.
Correct.
And I'm going to address this real quick. Scooby Dad Dog. Another recent study showed VO2 max was one of the factors associated with longevity. Truth. So why take a med that lowers that if you don't need to? I'm just going to say that there are studies showing low doses of metformin not having an impact on VO2 maxes, at least a couple of them. Research is still ongoing. And I agree. I mean, if somebody doesn't want to take medications, that's absolutely fine. I think our perspective is we're not as worried about that impact on a person who is not an athlete. Because at the end, even if it impacts longevity, there is no clear evidence that a low dose of metformin will impact that.
Yeah, let me clarify. Scooby Dog didn't mention it, and you did right at the end. We're talking about metformin in this discussion, not so much.
Yeah, about metformin, and he's appreciating the balanced approach, which is fantastic. That's what we want. Pros and cons, and the problem is when that study came out, and a couple of other people covered that, it went into the news and saying, "Oh, everybody should stop taking metformin," which is a problem because you are stopping yourself from using some of the benefits of metformin because of the risk of somebody that might not even have it.
Yeah, we've clearly got some people who are pushing their lifestyle dramatically, doing very, very well. Their BMI is like 23. They've got great body fat numbers on DEXA, and they're still having a lot of problems with their glucose management, and they're afraid to take metformin. And that's too bad. You know, they're afraid to try some of the other things. It's okay. As Jesus mentioned, the vast majority of people that we work with are not taking medications, and that's good. But everybody's not the same.
Yeah.
Jesus and I both have insulin resistance. I have technically full-blown diabetes. Jesus has early prediabetes, but we're still not the same.
Yep. Anyhow, I think that's.
Plus, I'm a lot better looking.
Well, that's arguable. Evidence is not out yet.
I would agree with
that. Well, you look better in person. I will say that. and just so people know, we have shared a room at some moment at the hotel, and I'm pretty sure nothing happened. So because I don't sleep well.
No, nothing happened. As one of our guys said, yeah, Ford's heterosexual. And I'm sorry that we even went there. I didn't, but we had to in order to tell the story about the sleepwalking.
Yeah. And one more thing I want to say, Rena, RGNGA1, she asking a really good question. I saw a news today that the Lancet Commission is starting to push the idea, not looking at BMI and starting to look at body fat percentage. Somebody with 20%.
That's much better.
20% or more fat percentage, it's overweight or obesity. So that's great. And thank you for sharing that. And I got your email. I'm already resend that to the person. Rena will know what I'm talking about. All right. So
just like it's much better to manage everything with lifestyle, it's much better to not have to use BMI. But the bottom line is there are times when you end up using things other than lifestyle. Just go ahead.
If you don't have anything else, BMI, it's a good proxy. If your BMI is more than 40, I mean, you clearly have body fat. If your BMI is somewhere between 23, 26, 27, well, yeah, you cannot just rely on that. I agree.
To your point, a lot of men especially will say, oh, I got a lot of muscle. I've got the Arnold Schwarzenegger effect. And it's true. Arnold Schwarzenegger actually had a BMI of 30 at the time that he won the Mr. Olympia. So
I think you might have a crush on Arnold Schwarzenegger.
No crush.
You provide that example every time.
Well, the problem is you hear it all the time because you see patients with me, but but for most patients, especially people that are not in that pumping iron, the bodybuilding space, Arnold Schwarzenegger is the only guy they know. Anyhow, the bottom line is he had a BMI of 30 at the time that he won Mr. Olympia. If you think you have a BMI approaching 30, and it's because of Arnold Schwarzenegger effect, if you look like he did at the time that he won Mr. Olympia, that may be true. If you don't, please reconsider.
And the one thing is, if you are a bodybuilder and you're eating a lot of carbs to build muscle, just be careful. A lot of people confuse being fit with being metabolically healthy, and that's sometimes just not the case.
Yeah, you brought a really good point up about fat in muscle fibers, and I know you're trying to get us off, so I'm not going to go down that bunny hole, but it's a very interesting bunny hole. Yeah. Maybe we'll cover that next time.
Do you like that you are called now that you look like Marlboro Man?
Marlboro Man without the cigarettes. Yeah, I like that.
Well, we're not sponsoring cigarettes, though. Just
no.
Keep in mind. You should never smoke, despite what some people say out there. No, don't smoking. Anyhow,
well, that wasn't a cigarette commercial anyway.
Oh yeah. Well, no, we're not advising for that. Anyhow, so see you next week then. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.